So to clarify, when I say writer's block, I'm not talking specifically about being stuck in writing, although these ideas do apply in that case. I'm talking about the more general sense, the universal conundrum in the creative process as a whole. Of feeling like you've hit a wall, you're not sure what to do next, you feel like you need ideas and don't have them. Almost as if you've encountered a block. Writer's block is not something I experience these days, and honestly it strikes me as kind of a strange concept. This is because I've adapted certain mindsets and frameworks in terms of how I view the creative process as a whole, how I view the generation of ideas, in particular how I view the role of ideas in the quest for a finished product. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the overall mindset that allows me to stay immersed in the creative flow, and then 3 specific ways that you can take this mindset and apply it to overcoming creative blockages. So let's hop to it. Here we have a blank page. So peaceful. Let's say we want to choose a shape from this lovely page right here. So there's a nice little circle and a nice little square for us to choose from. Okay, cool. But maybe we want a little bit of a broader field of possibilities. Maybe just having those 2 options is a little bit constricting. So we'll add in some triangles. I mean, who doesn't love triangles? You gotta love triangles. Equilateral triangles, 30-60-90 right triangles, 45-45-90 right triangles, triangles that break the bounds of Euclidean geometry by existing on a spherical surface and therefore being able to have angles with a sum in excess of 180 degrees. Sorry. Triangles are beautiful and I'm an enthusiastic boy who can't help himself. Okay, so now we've got a lot of options, yeah? As far as choosing shapes, the sky's the limit. We're free, but what the heck? Let's become even more free. Let's just keep adding shapes to the page until the possibilities become absolutely limitless. And we'll never be at a loss for any shapes to choose from ever again. And wait, what just happened? I thought we were expanding our possibilities, but now it's just a completely blank page with no discernible shapes on it whatsoever. At this point, we have reached what I like to call the void. And it works great as a metaphor for writer's block. If we make a graph, and the x-axis represents the number of choices available to us, and the y-axis represents our perception of how many options we have, it will steadily rise until a certain point the chaos becomes too much, and it plummets down to 0. That's the void. Our goal then in eviscerating writer's block is to avoid the void. We need to take that process of increasingly overwhelming, indiscernible choice and reverse it. Creativity functions best when you think of it as a process of questions and answers. Questions that allow you to take an infinite field of possibilities and narrow it down further and further and further until you're left with something clearly defined, something real. So when you encounter writer's block, the trick is not to ask, how can I come up with the right idea? But to instead ask, how can I narrow the field of possibilities so my choices are clearer? All right, evisceration method number 1, tighten your parameters. I did a video last year where I asked my Facebook friends to provide me with chords to turn into a song. I ended up getting a rather long and involved list of 23 chords, many of them pretty out there, and decided to make 4 songs out of that list. Here's something you may find surprising. From the outside, this may seem like it was a sort of wild creative challenge, and that was certainly how people seemed to respond to it. But my actual experience of creating it was really quite straightforward. Normally, in writing a song, there are a lot of possibilities, a lot of questions, if you will, flowing at every moment. What's the story? What's the emotion? What's the feel? What chord and chords are going to be right? What note and notes will fit here and there? What's the tone that's going to work? What rhythms? And so on and so on and so on. Having this so-called creative challenge of exclusively and exhaustively using this very specific list of chords actually served to eliminate most of that creative decision-making process. Rather than perceiving such a wide field of possibilities more akin to the void, I was forced to perceive a very narrow and thus very tangible field of options. Instead of, well, what do I do next? The question simply became, well, how do I use these chords? And from that very specific parameter, all else could flow. I was able to write that music very quickly and easily, with a really exciting sense of motion and energy and uniqueness. It's the difference between, hey, tell me about yourself, versus, hey, tell me about that space station you grew up on. That sounds really interesting. The more you can get to the place of asking very specific questions, working within very specific parameters, the easier it becomes to get into the flow. Evisceration method number 2, invite chaos. Alright, so now in a sense we're going to go in the opposite direction. One way to activate tighter, more useful creative frameworks is to ask more specific questions of yourself. Another is to loosen up your boundaries. Not in the sense of how many options you're perceiving, but rather in the sense of where you let yourself perceive those options as coming from. Stop trying to be some kind of lone genius, generating brilliant ideas out of nowhere, and instead tap the infinite well of inspiration that is the wondrous world around you. One of the most bizarre and fascinating experiences of my life came when I went on this walk, about 15 minutes, and I decided to turn the walk into a story, completely blurring the lines between imagination and reality. What followed was so astonishingly vivid and detailed, it was almost like I had seen a movie. Seriously. What I did was I imagined that I was this gargantuan humanoid mech ship that was carrying this society on its journey to a new, distant home. So I relaxed my conscious mind, I let the creative stream flow, and I walked. And then it was as if I was watching this story unfold in real time, not even creating it myself. I was this giant humanoid ship on this journey, and so the world around me was the place that this journey was unfolding within. I made it feel so real that it ceased to be a question of what would happen next in the story. The story was happening, and all I had to do was watch and let my mind's eye fill in the details. Now, I know this may sound strange and somewhat extreme as an example, but the general principles here are very practical. Simply put, it's this: loosen your grip, look around you. The clouds are always painting a new picture in the sky. The wind is always whispering a new song in the air. You just have to look. You just have to listen. When you drop the barrier between your mind and the world around you, when you allow yourself to forget what you know, and let the things you perceive be metaphors, and characters, and pieces of another world, the stream of specific, tangible ideas is endless. And if you're creatively stuck, maybe what you need isn't some perfect idea. Maybe what you need is to simply get the waters moving. Flip a coin, roll the dice, drop your finger on the map with your eyes shut, so to speak. Stuckness can often mean that you're overemphasizing the importance of ideas in the process. The creative process is, after all, a process. As we chase the completed product, we may cycle through a lot of different ideas. It helps to zoom back out and see the bigger picture. Perhaps if you're stuck, you can simply move on for the time being and come back later to whatever had you stuck. You might find that the ideas flow much easier once you've reoriented your sense of context. By inviting chaos, you invite motion. Even moving in the direction of an idea that's bad on purpose is better than wallowing in the void, trying to come up with some perfect holy grail of an idea and not moving in any direction at all. By exploring what very clearly doesn't work, you'll gain more clarity on why that is, and therefore on what might actually work. Just try something. Life itself, the ultimate endless creative process, is pretty messy. Motion is chaotic, and motion is what we need. Evisceration method number 3, deadlines, the death ground strategy. I did a video a couple years ago where I wrote, recorded, and mixed a 21-minute album entirely within the span of 9 hours. If I had asked myself before that if such a thing were possible, my answer certainly would have been a resounding no. But by actually setting that parameter and simply diving in and trying it, I discovered that it actually was possible. It necessitated a very different process than I was used to, and it certainly wasn't up to my usual standards in many ways, but it was possible. And moreover, there were actually ways that it did meet my usual standards. The music and the lyrics and the vocal performances are things I'm still quite proud of. In less extreme cases, I've found that whenever I'm met with a sudden deadline and I have to complete a project within a time span that just doesn't feel possible, I always find a way. I bet you've noticed something similar in your own life. I leap into action and the ideas flow. I find different ways of tackling the problem and ultimately eliminate a lot of the stuff that I thought was necessary but maybe wasn't all that important in the process. In the early days of this channel, I was putting out a video every Wednesday night. And the way that pretty much always tended to go is that I would put it off for most of the week, and then Wednesday would roll around, and I'd go, well, time to make a video, and I would spring into action. The ideas would come, I'd find a way to make it work, I'd put in the time, and I'd have a finished video. That's why I've committed to putting out a video every day this year. And already I've gotten so many ideas that simply weren't accessible when I wasn't working with a clear deadline. This video itself is a great example. Normally it's something I could easily spend hours and hours tweaking, let alone the fact that I probably wouldn't have even gotten the idea and committed to making it without having the deadline. But with that deadline looming of not yet having released a video today, I've pushed myself to get to work, and the ideas have followed. Sun Tzu describes death ground as the phenomenon where an army that has its back to a body of water or a mountain will fight 3 times harder, knowing that escape is not an option. This is something Robert Greene talks about a lot in his books. Highly recommended, by the way. The effect that it has on our energy, our creative flow, and our efforts when we're truly committed to, say, meeting a deadline. He gives a particularly mind-boggling example in his book Mastery, where he describes the story of a young mathematician who challenges someone to a duel and then realizes he's probably not going to survive and ends up staying up all night the night before the duel, just feverishly writing equations. Quote, "The next day, as he had foreseen, he died in the duel, but in the ensuing years his notes were read and published, leading to a complete revolution in higher algebra. Some of his scribbled notes indicated directions in mathematics that were so far ahead of his time, it's hard to fathom where they came from." So there are a lot of different ways you can go about setting deadlines. Obviously that example was a little bit extreme. I'm sure you would agree with me in saying that I'd prefer to stick around on Earth a little bit longer rather than just having one amazing night of creativity. That being said, I am a fan of making the deadlines as huge and scary as possible, but such extremes aren't always necessary. For example, you can set a goal for how much you want to get done on a project on a given day or a given session of work. You can set timers as you work and try to reach a certain quota before the time runs out. It helps to set a deadline that feels like a stretch, or better yet, impossible. You can fail to reach that ambitious goal and still end up getting a lot further than you would have if you hadn't set a goal at all. There's really nothing to lose, so you might as well give it your all and try your best, see what's possible. But I have to be honest, there's really no substitute for a truly tangible, terrifying deadline. The effect that such deadlines have on your creative powers is nothing short of astonishing. With the real possibility of failure staring you in the face, you'll find a way to make things work. You'll be astounded at the things you come up with, seriously. It just takes making the first move, diving in, committing to a deadline, inviting life to bring you the ideas. You won't truly understand just how powerful your mind and imagination are, just how endless the possibilities are, until you've tested these limits. So find a way. Even if it's a small, not so terrifying deadline, set one and just watch what happens. So, as a quick recap, here are our 3 methods for avoiding the void and eviscerating writer's block. Evisceration method number 1, tighten your parameters. See creativity as an endless process of questions and answers, of funneling many possibilities down to one reality. Evisceration method number 2, invite chaos. See the world around you as a reflection of your imagination. Let it inspire you. Prioritize motion over perfection, and let the creative process be a process as messy as life itself. And evisceration method number 3, deadlines, the death ground strategy. Create within a framework that has a real possibility of failure. Push yourself to work faster and more effectively than you believe you're capable of. Dive in head first, trust that the ideas and energy will come, and watch what happens. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you find these ideas useful and practical in eviscerating writer's block from your creative process. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you again soon.